So, long time ago, we talked about ISO 20022 and how it has nothing to do with the underlying crypto. This whole thing of ISO 20022 compliant coin is complete nonsense. And I thought it was interesting because after that, there seemed to be like a year or two period where I saw nothing. It just completely died, that whole meme. And then now I've been seeing it resurface. And I kind of want to ask about like these broader things, that these memes that come up and how crypto is very meme focused. I don't know. What do you think about that? Why do these things keep popping up? Why can't we like quash some of these silly ideas?
Yeah, it's. By the way, I've seen that too. I've seen that
Yeah.
ISO 2020 whatever come up, and of course,
Yeah.
like I said before, it's just a messaging standard. If you've got a free text field in your transaction, then you too are compliant.
Mhm.
So the whole thing is just silly. As I said before, Algorand is not compliant.
Yep. I get that repeated back to me a lot, by the way.
But by the way, this applies to everything. Nillion is
Mhm.
not compliant. Can be
Right.
compliant if we stick the ISO messages in our nil database. Like
Right.
so. Um, but yeah, I mean, the world though is more memeified.
That's
Like,
true.
like even just like forget about crypto, just like GameStop, GameStop stock
Yeah.
is a meme. Like I think like Tesla stock is a meme. The whole I think and why did that happen? And I think actually the internet is the answer. The internet has basically
Mm.
allowed collective consciousness to come together, and it ebbs and flows like a murder of crows, and you end up
Yeah.
essentially with people stampeding all in the same direction, hoping to make a quick buck. And so I don't think it's ever going away. I think the day we had real time communications and added to that, so that's the internet, and of course, and added to that,
Mm.
we had essentially uncontrolled, largely digital assets, or certainly
Mhm.
assets that were essentially non-permissionless or non-permissioned. That's the day that like the meme took over. And so I think it's here to stay, and it's for good and for bad. You know,
Yeah.
I quite like to see social. I'm a libertarian, and just to be clear, that's not a liberal. That is someone who doesn't like government interference. Um, and
Mhm.
so like I think it's good that we have these platforms to push back against government control, digital IDs, privacy invasion. I think it's good that like I don't want my iPhone scanning my images for wrongdoing. I don't want
Mhm.
someone in my DMs with my wife making sure I'm not saying things that are inappropriate. Like fuck
Mhm.
off. Like, and that's why I think
Right.
privacy is critical. You know.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. No, I think it's interesting because it is like crypto is so internet focused, I guess, or driven. I
Mm.
think so. If the internet is memeified in general, then of course that would translate. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So you might have to be careful how you address this, but ask you like what kinds of things do you do personally in crypto? Like, what are your favorite use cases? And that can be investment wise, it can be non-investment wise. And then tacked onto that, I am curious if you're still running an Algorand node.
So I'm still running an Algorand node, and still holding Algorand. And so, of course, like when I worked at Algorand, I bought Algo. I was awarded Algo, over the course of the 3 years I was there. And so I still very much believe in the future of Algorand, and I hold it alongside the other cryptocurrencies that I think are valuable. And so, I'm quite a traditionalist in the sense that like I typically don't jump onto the latest thing. So I've been holding a bag of Monero for a long time, and I think it'll do very well from here. Personally, I obviously can't predict the future, and so you shouldn't buy it just because I think it's going to do well. But I think privacy and
Mhm.
payments is really important, and I think a large anonymity set is really important. And so, um, as in strong functional privacy, not just like tech babble. And so
Right.
I think both Monero and Zcash will do well over time. And so I typically sit though in like I worked for Ethereum, so I have some ETH. I worked for Algorand, I keep Algo, and then I got into crypto because of Monero. There's no Monero Foundation or Monero company, so I bought Monero. But like typically in those assets, quite simple. I don't have kind of a big fat bag of random meme coins, except for the meme coins that I bought on Algo for the lulz because they were funny, and I still hold all of them. Um, and then outside of that, I'm very much someone who brings cryptography and privacy into my personal life. So, for example, the same Algorand keys that I use for Algo, I use to cryptographically sign things or to prove that I am speaking in certain contexts. And it is actually me because, oh, well, John, he owns that woods.algo account. So if he can sign something with that key, a plain text message, it proves that I'm talking to the actual guy here, not just some bot on Discord or not just some, troll on Telegram. So that's number one.
Mhm.
And number two, in terms of just computing, I use cryptography every single day. I use GPG for encrypting things and for signing digital messages. I use Edwards 25519 keys for SSH so I can talk to my computers remotely. I use Pi-hole to block ads and do DNS level filtering of web things that I do. And then I use WireGuard. So if I'm staying in a hotel, if the hotel just sees me with an encrypted connection to my home, and that's basically it. They don't see anything I'm doing. And so more broadly, I think crypto started off as a cypherpunk movement against the banks. The original idea was, hey, let's have an asset class outside the scope of quantitative easing, outside the scope of seigniorage by issuance of currency by a fiat entity like a central bank. And it lost its way a little bit. I think some of that core idea. And so I like to see some of those ideals creep back in. And so I try to be cypherpunk in terms of how I interact with things. And and typically the influence there is I only buy quality projects that I truly believe in. And there's a very few of them. Nillion is one, or I wouldn't be working there. Algorand is one. Monero is one. Cardano is one. Bitcoin is one. ETH is one. But outside of that, I don't have a lot. One thing I am interested in, and I'll wind up this answer now in a sec, is Hyperliquid. At first, I was a little bit skeptical of it, but more recently, just using it. And again, there's still centralization elements. The Hyperliquid Foundation essentially are staking most of the hype in order to secure the network. And there's some sustainability questions around that and some decentralization questions. But more broadly, as a user experience, as a product offering, the liquidity that's available there. Some of these products, by the way, are dangerous. Of course, the leverage products, of course, you can lose your shirt. But it's still cool that level of complex financial product is out there, and the way they buy back the token and that whole kind of ecosystem, to me, is quite interesting.
Nice. That's cool. Well, I could ask you a ton more questions, but we'll maybe save that for next time because we're getting close. So I want to give the chat a little bit of let's see. Green Blue Algo asked, will Algorand play well with Nillion? What are John's thoughts on an ideal structure for the new incorporation that is Algorand? What do you think about that?
So will Algorand play well with Nillion? Yes, absolutely. In fact, we're going to be rolling out very soon as part of this decentralization plan, a kind of a new way to interact with Nillion from other cryptocurrencies. And so Algorand would, of course, be at the top of the list there, and it would be super cool.